On my video talking about how I think Davy D. Jones and Joy Boy are the same person, a commenter by the name S3P8472, who has commented on a lot of my videos, stated, "I bet Davy D. Jones has an eye patch." This alone struck my brain with a memory of what I was going to cover a while ago. However, we're covering it right now. So let me hit you with a very interesting quote. "A pirate with an eye patch will appear in the final phase of One Piece. I'm itching to draw that character as soon as possible. Maybe people have a preconception that many pirates wear eye patches, but actually I've never drawn any pirates with an eye patch." By Ichiro Oda in 2007, translated by Pewpiece. Now, what if I told you that every single character that has been associated with Nika has had some sort of eye gag so far? Every single one. So, this starts actually, as far as I can tell, in Thriller Bark. For you see, we have Oars, the giant zombie. We don't know what Oars this is. It could be Oars the first, but I've always thought that it was probably Oars the second, the son of the Oars Moria is talking about, right? But the funny thing about him is that he is possessed by Luffy's shadow, whom at this point is the user of the human fruit model Nika. But oddly too, Oars, despite all of Hogback's modifications, is missing an eye. Quite curious. So we have a zombie possessed by the shadow of the user of the human fruit model Nika missing an eye. That's odd. Then cut to Elbaf, in which we have Loki, someone who is as big as Oars, as Zoro points out, but too is being depicted wearing a blindfold over his eyes. We later find out that's to hide that he has scary demon eyes, but it's interesting that he too calls himself the Sun Deity, and the Sun Deity is of course very popular in Elbaf. Speaking about depictions of the Sun Deity, however, don't you find it odd that we always see Nika from the side? The only time Nika is depicted from the front is in Vegapunk's mind when he's talking about Nika and how his forces were defeated by what we assume to be the people who came together to form the world government. It's super odd that in Who's depiction of Nika, the fact that Luffy struck the Nika pose when he first transformed into Nika, and we see the side of him there. And in all the art depictions of Nika and Elbaf, we see the deity from the side. When you depict somebody from the side, you only see one eye. So that in itself is quite interesting. Now, with that being said, let's take it back to Luffy's crew. And I did lie, because the first time in which we see a person who is covering their eye is during the Baratie A arc with Sanji. Now, looking at the Straw Hat crew, we have two of the strongest members now in the current story who have a weird eye thing going on. Zoro now always has this eye closed. We don't know why his eye is closed. Maybe he's missing one, maybe he's not. But we know his eye is closed and there is a scar over his eye. This pairs with Sanji, who now from the pre-time skip to the post-time skip has switched the piece of hair that is covering his eye. So now his other eye is hidden by his hair. This is probably due in part because if both eyes were revealed, we would see how freaky his eyebrows are because they curl in the same direction. So both of the strongest members on the Straw Hat crew have some weird eye theming going on. But when you look at Jinbei, he too also has a weird eye theme going on, but it's not as prominent as the other two because he simply has a Thunderbolt scar over one of his eyes, but he does have both of his eyes. It's neither implied that one eye is missing nor is one eye covered. So I'm not sure if he's the odd man out there, but it is an interesting thing to bring up. Now, getting down to speculation before we end things things off, it is quite interesting that both Loki and Bonnie do have an eye theme going on. We know the reason why Bonnie even has the anti-eyebrow is because that is meant to replace the marks that were once there due to the fact that she had the sapphire scale disease, which has some interesting lore implications onto itself because we don't know where that exactly comes from or why it exists in the first place. So she used the anti-eyebrow as a replacement for the mark once left by the sapphire scale disease because her father has never seen her well. Her father, of course, is a worshiper of Nika, and Bonnie becomes Nika later on after fighting Luffy, who is Nika. So that in itself is interesting. But however, her anti-eyebrow does pair well with Luffy having a scar under his eye, and she's the only supernova who's treated in this way. I know X Drake is wearing like a weird false eye patch, but I'm not really counting that because his importance is dubious at this point. I don't really know, but she's the interesting one because she's connected with Nika. Then when you look at Loki, someone else who is a candidate to become a Straw Hat at this point, he too is covering his eyes because his eyes aren't missing. They're just freaky, which, like with Bonnie, that has some very interesting lore implications. Why does he have demon eyes? You know? So both of them are pretty important in this whole scheme here because both of them have a weird eye theme and both of them have some relation to Nika. Bonnie has even become Nika and Loki claims to be Nika. What that means in the future, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I have done videos on that though, but moving on. However, when you look at Luffy, we know that he did scar himself under one of his eyes during the time when he is a child to try to prove himself to Shanks that he is a man. However, the theming of this scene does change slightly in the live action because a comment is made by Luffy as a child that he would have gouged his eye out if he could. So that's interesting that they snuck that into the live action. I'm not sure how much depth that has when you look at the current story, but it's something to consider. But to take things back up to the top for a second, big thank you to user S3P8472 because they did make me think of this entire video with their comment saying that they bet Davy D. Jones has an eye patch because with that video that I made, if Davy D. Jones is Joy Boy and they were one of the users of the human fruit model Nika, it would make a lot of sense that the world's first pirate is the one who has an eye patch. I could see that being the case because it just makes sense. And then it would make even more sense that this person is being paralleled with Luffy. So I could see that being a possibility. Now, with that being said, as you may or may not know, One Piece, and this is getting pretty meta, but One Piece is published in a magazine called Shonen Jump. What is the symbol of Shonen Jump? No, really, what is the symbol of Shonen Jump? What has always been the symbol of Shonen Jump? A pirate wearing an eye patch, right? What is One Piece about? Pirates. What is undoubtedly the most popular manga associated with Shonen Jump? One Piece, right? So wouldn't it make a lot of sense that the main character of the most popular manga within Shonen Jump would represent the symbol, the mascot of Shonen Jump? Something to think about. Something to think about indeed. But with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Works It!